Half a day and hello, everyone. This is Kate Soliva with you here on Veteran Voices. Thanks for joining us today as we've got a wonderful conversation teed up with a veteran and advocate and volunteer. Stay tuned for a great discussion. Just a quick programming note before we get started. This program is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming. The show is conducted in partnership with near and dear friends of mine. Big shout out to Brian and the Vets to Industry crew. Learn more about this powerful nonprofit organization that's serving so many folks at vetstoindustry.org. An initiative that's near and dear to my heart, the Guam Human Rights Initiative. You can find them on LinkedIn and at the University of Guam under the Regional Center for Public Policy. All right, I can't wait anymore. Without further ado, let's introduce our guest today. Our guest today is a founder and president of Century Institute, Inc. He's also volunteers for Stand Up for Kids, OC, Orange County, West Side. And without further ado, welcoming in my Army brother here, Paul Peng. Thanks, Paul, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Kate.
I'm super excited to have you on board because I feel like my last episodes, most of them have been Navy. So I'm like, I got to mix it up. You get some Navy, Marine Corps. I was like, I got to get some Army in here.
But
I'm really excited. I know. Well, I know just like a moment ago, we were talking about the Army song, but I'm going to spare everybody from singing that right now. But I really like to pump us up right now with some motivation. And would like to see if you could share with our audience today a sort of a motivational quote that you got.
You know what? I have a lot of them. Like, you have Les Brown, you have Eric Thomas, you have, David Goggins, you got a whole bunch of them, right? But I think, when it comes to all-time favorite quotes, I always like to go old school. I like my Benjamin Franklin quote. Most people die at 25, but don't get buried until they're 75.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
wow.
It's kind of interesting quote because it's kind of the same thing today. I mean, most people go to work,
right?
they hate. So most people go to a job they hate, right? Statistically speaking, 83% of Americans go to a job they hate. That means 17% actually enjoy their work. That's a really sad number, right? So 83% hate the jobs they work at, but they go because it provides some form of stability.
Right.
As we all know, during COVID, everybody got laid off, including me.
Yeah, a lot of people did, most definitely, and we're still not out of it yet. So
no,
just to really, I think you're the first one that I've heard say that one. So thank you for sharing that motivational quote. Mm-hmm. Now I was expecting you to actually sing something, but
okay.
But I was like, here we go, 3, 2, 1, we can harmonize. But no, that's great. You said Franklin. I was like, wasn't he the one that wanted the turkey to be our national bird? If I'm not mistaken. Maybe there's some random factoids out there.
I always thought it was Thomas Jefferson, but I could have been wrong.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm about to take us way back. Our listeners can't see you right now, but you're sitting in a rocking chair. We were just talking about how old we feel right now, but
yeah,
I'd like to see we're going to take it way back. So it's like story time with Paul here. So can you let our listeners today know about where you grew up?
Yeah, so I was born in Taiwan. I came here when I was 1. So I spent my childhood in Monterey Park, California. So, was like from there from like 5 to, I don't know. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not 5, 1 o'clock, 1 year old to about 5. And then I finished kindergarten there. And then I grew up in Cerritos from 1st grade all the way up until I graduated high school. That's pretty much where I lived. After high school, joined the military, came out, and the rest is history.
Do you have a big family, small family?
I have a mom, 2 brothers. My parents are divorced. They divorced after my second tour, was like 2008 or 2009 or something like that. So
what is like with your upbringing? What are some, did you end up like going out? What was your favorite thing to do as a kid? Did you play soccer? Play basketball?
No.
Legal things, only legal things here.
Legal things, yeah. That's a good. I'm just kidding. No, I was So it's a funny thing. I was never into sports. Um, I went out a lot partying. So, because I had a pretty rough childhood from when I was since fourth grade, because my parents were always bickering. My dad and my mom weren't having the best relationships, and that kind of filtered down to me and my brothers. So I always kind of went out, and you would have hated me as a teenager because I was the one that like snuck out of the house at like 11 o'clock at night, didn't come back till 4 o'clock in the morning, and nobody knew. I found out ways to like unlock my screen door, go out. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like what well with that being said, I'm just trying to imagine that. You said you were how old when you came over
I
and
was
you ended up
one.
moving? Oh,
I
you
was
were
one.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not 1 o'clock,
Yeah,
one.
no, not 1 o'clock. My mind is just thinking time right now. I don't know why.
We are on different time zones here, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get a little bit of I guess lessons learned from your upbringing. I mean, like you said, you didn't have necessarily the rainbows and sunshine of a childhood that some may have had, but do you have any sort of lessons learned that you have from that time?
Not really, no. I don't think so, because I think what actually changed me was probably when I joined the military.
Mm.
Ironically, I don't know if I told you this before, Mary, but I joined the military to kind of piss off my parents. That
How
was
old
kind
were
of
you at the time?
I was 17. So I joined,
Oh,
I was in the delayed entry program. So I joined up in 2000, didn't graduate to 2001. So I was technically already in a year before I went to basic, but I joined. Here's the funny part. So I joined, and the recruiter said, your son will never get deployed because he's joining the reserves. That's the only way I got my parents to sign, because I was under 18. So they signed. I went, I drilled for a whole year, didn't really do a whole lot because I'm just a civilian wearing a uniform at that point, right? A week and a month. And went to basic July 4th, 2001. I graduated November 9th, 2001. So 9/11 happened in between all that.
wow.
So my little, reserve quote unquote career just went out the window. Nobody told me that the military police was the most deployed reserve occupation in the entire thingamabobber, whatever. So, I came back I came back from basic, and then within like a year and a half, I got deployed in 2003 to Iraq the first time for a year. Came back and got deployed to like multiple different other stateside places in between that for like 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, a month here, a month there.
Yeah, you're talking
And
about deployment now. What branch were you?
I was in the Army.
Army. Is there a
Yeah.
reason why you chose Army out of all
I
those
don't
other
know.
branches that you had to choose from?
They got to me first.
That's what I feel like everybody's stories, like they ended up in the
Yeah.
army because like the Air Force door was closed, nobody was there, or
Yeah.
they were like on a long lunch break and nobody was in the office.
Dude, I
So
got
I'm
I
just gonna
got
walk
so
and join
mad
the army.
because I deployed twice, right? So I was deployed in 2003, and I went again in 2008. But my second deployment was actually longer. My first one was a year. My second one was a year and a half. So that second one was rough because it was a really long deployment. But the funny thing is, in my first deployment, I remember going into an Air Force DFAC,
Mhm.
and like I was kind of excited and mad at the same time, if you can kind of imagine, because you have to remember, like if for those of you that are listening, if you've ever been to like a Marine Corps DFAC or Army DFAC, the food's the same practically, right? In the morning you have what? You have grits, eggs. If you're lucky, you got bacon and French toast, right? Maybe some like white crappy bread on the side, and if you're lucky, they give you yogurt. At lunch, it's like spaghetti with like army ketchup, right? Which is like the cheap
You
version of
didn't
marinara.
mention the infamous sausage gravy on
There you go.
biscuits
That too.
with
Oh
the
yeah, that's
mystery meat.
right. We actually didn't get that all the time. Overseas, we sometimes got it and sometimes didn't. Really depend on what day it was. But we always
So
got eggs.
you walked into this Air Force chow hall and you got very upset
Yeah,
because
because I
what would
walked
they
in, it
have,
was lunch.
lobster rolls or what?
No, they didn't. Oh, it was, dude. I would have flipped the table if that was the case. But no, so they had, they're having spaghetti that day. And I remember this because I was just so flabbergasted. They had spaghetti that day. They had a guy that was dressed in like a really nice, fancy get up with like an apron and everything. And then
Mhm.
there was like music playing, and there was like lights. There was actual lights, not like those hanging crappy lights that they just kind of hooked up to a generator, but an actual lighting setup. They had 4 different types of spaghetti. They had 3 different types of sauces, and they had a guy make it for you that you could choose what you wanted: chicken, sausage, the meatball, whatever, right? So they had 3 different kinds of meat. You can get all 3. You can get not, you know, and they had a slushy machine, and they had like a salad bar, and the fruit was actually fresh.
Now, were you in uniform when you walked in, or were
Yes, I
you in
was
plain clothes?
actually. I
Oh,
was
you
in
were in
Qatar.
uniform.
I remember where I was. I was in Qatar. I was in a base in Qatar on my first deployment. They gave us 3 days of leave somewhere in there, and we showed up in Qatar for 3 days. That was our break for the whole year.
So what they do? Tell you to turn around about facing and go back to your can
Yeah,
of
I was.
beans
Well, I
and
mean, it was a
spam?
defect. I was just like, dude, I joined the wrong branch, and then I talked to the, you know. And look, guys, if you guys are in the Air Force, I'm not hating, even though it might have sounds like I'm hating, but I'm not hating. Okay, it's just we get danger pay. You guys get danger pay and substandard living allowance. I'm like, for living in a hotel. Love you guys, but damn, I joined the wrong branch. I'm just envious. That's all I'm saying. Don't hate me.
I like you still remember like the different types of spaghetti and the different
Yeah,
sauces. Well,
yeah,
even
they
the
have,
little things, the little details about they had an actual light. You know, it's like when
yeah.
you say like they had running water, we didn't even have that. It's
Well, I mean,
like
no, it wasn't that bad.
here's
We
your
had running water
people,
in
dig
the
a
other
hole.
bases too, but it was just like, you know, it was just like it was food. Like it was like restaurant quality food versus what we had, which was, you know, one step above. Actually, no, I don't know what it was. Probably cafeteria food. That's what we had. Yeah.
So, well, you said you're military police your whole career.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
You
how
guys can get
was
mad at me
that for
because I
you?
never
Don't you
did
all get like a
garrison.
bad rap over, being a cop in the
Well,
military?
that's what I was saying, because your listeners can't get mad at me specifically because I never did a day of garrison. I never pulled anybody over.
Ah,
I never issued a ticket. All of my experiences were in wartime. So I have experience with like managing like a POW camp, managing like, you know, a prison camp, but for the
wow.
Iraqis, right? So you know, in my second tour, I worked with a lot of police stations. So we were part of a pit team where we had to, me personally, I was in charge of, what was it, $25,000, I think it was, every month. The government would give me $25,000, and I was in charge of that, and then I would go out to these different police stations, and I would see what they wanted. So there'd be like a new police car or new roads or whatever, right? Part of a new school, something. I'd have a
Hmm.
receipt, go back, write a report about it, and then in return we would get information about where Al Qaeda was.
Wow.
You know, so that's what I
And
did.
at this point, how old were you at that point?
My second tour, I was 24.
But that was also your longest one too, where you're out there like a year
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
half.
that was a brutal one. That second tour was freaking long as hell.
My goodness. I know
But
you were posting pictures recently of you out
oh,
in
that was
the
my first one.
in the desert, huh?
That was my first one. That was 2003. And then I looked at a picture of myself like, holy shit. Sorry, I can't cuss. Holy crap, I looked so like a baby.
For all that experience, that's why you're in your rocking chair right now with all
Oh
your
my
wisdom
gosh.
to paying it forward here. So yeah, speaking of paying it forward, you must not have gone through all of that on your own. I'm just thinking like, you have any sort of mentors or people that inspired you, took you under their wing? Young Paul.
You mean in the
I'll
military?
take care. While you're still on active duty or in the
My
military, I
first
should say, 'cause
tour,
you're reserves. Yeah.
yeah, I mean my first tour, not really. My second tour, it was my squad leader. So it was Sergeant Lengtho, right? I remember his name. I haven't talked to him in years. But I do, somehow he always stuck with me. It's kind of funny, on our second deployment, we were nicknamed the married couple. That was literally our nickname.
You were the married couple?
Yeah, me and him were the married couple. So, you know, he just to kind of, he was 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyes. So he looked like, you know, Thor, I guess, if you want to think about it. You know, we worked out together. He was my squad leader. We worked out together, hung out together, ate together, did everything together, but we argued like nobody's business, because every single time we would go out and we would do patrols, me and him, because I was the second command of the squad, me and him would always talk about route planning and about contingencies and so on and so forth. And we would always agree on 80% of it, but for whatever reason, 20% of the plans we never agreed on. So we would bicker about it. That's how we got the name married couple.
Oh man,
Everyone's
because I
like,
was like,
oh,
you're talking about his height here, but our listeners don't know what you look like. So immediately, I don't know why I was thinking of twins and like Arnold Schwarzenegger and like Danny DeVito, but I don't think it's not that much of a.
no, it was just because the reason why I kind of described what he looked like was because he got a lot of comments about how he looked by both men and women.
Ah,
So just to give you an idea of what he looked like. I don't know
cool.
why, but it was just always funny how that always kind of happened. But
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, yeah, give them a shout out. I mean, who knows if they'll be tuning into
you
this
know what,
episode, but
Linko, if you're listening to this, dude, we need to link up again because I haven't talked to you in like decades. He lives in New York. Well, he lived in New York. I don't know where he lives now, but he was a police officer in New York.
yeah, it's like, I mean, especially on deployment though, you just really want to find those folks that you can really hang on to, those ones that really take you under their wing, make sure that you're squared away, that you're looking sharp and got everything that you need.
No, he definitely kept me on it. He definitely
Yeah.
kept me on my toes. But it's funny, and like I know we said we're the married couple, but we actually complimented each other in a lot of different ways. Um, I remember I went on my in my year and a half deployment, they gave us 2 weeks this time instead of 3 days. So I flew back home to the States to spend time with my family, and then I flew back. Long story short, I did not want to go back, but I had to. But when I came back, he was like so happy. He was like, "Oh my God, you're back! Thank God!" I'm like, "Why? What's going on?"
Missed
So
the other half. That's why I was. Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Well, how many years did you end up serving?
it was 9. It was 9 years total. I was stop lost. So my 8-year contract ended, and I was still in Iraq. So they held me over against my will for another year.
Well, you had a great time, as they
Oh, I
say.
had a well. You know what? I did because
Well,
it's
this is
funny because
before like
even
the
though
YouTube, right? Too, Paul. Like you didn't get to do one of those videos, lip sync, karaoke sort of things while you're
no,
downrange.
no, we what we did do was we did do like a little. I can't find the video anymore. We did like this little skit with with the Marine Corps because they were with us in Fallujah when we got deployed. They were kind of like our bodyguards. So there was a platoon of Marines guarding a squad of Army people going around all these police stations to make sure that we stayed safe. But I mean, we did little skits there about cereal. Um,
Hmm.
it's funny because I always miss like I don't really care too much about the bad times about us getting into getting blown up or anything like that. Another thing I remember is smoking hookah with the Marines every night and the Iraqis. So what we would do is, for whatever reason, the Marines always had a crap ton of hand sanitizer. They had crap for food, like they had no food. Or I mean, let me rephrase. They had food, but I wouldn't label it food. It's edible, right? It kept them alive. That's probably the best term I had for it. But for whatever reason, they had a crap ton of hand sanitizer, like a room full of it. So what we would do is we would take the Hesco barrel, cut out like a little metal grate, get some rocks, put it together, and pour hand sanitizer in the pool and put the grate on top and light the hand sanitizer on fire. And that's how we lit the hookah. And we actually got a lot of intel that way. On a side note, just to smoking hookah with the Iraqi police and their version of SWAT.
Well, it's you all got creative, and I only hear stories now
Yeah.
about the things that happened. One of those like sometimes those stories don't get told. This well, you said 8 years. You're coming to the end of your contract. As far as your transition goes, you said you were deployed still when your contract was
Correct.
coming to an end, right? So you got home, and then what was that like?
Well, I got
Would they rush
home.
you out the door?
Yeah, actually they did. So I had 30 days of leave. So, I got home and then my tour ended, but then I had 30 days of leave. So I wanted to make sure I got paid for those 30 days. So I stayed my 30 days and then they ETS'd me and all that other stuff and I got out. And your question was, how was my transition?
Like that decision that you had about like, okay, I'm at 8 years. This is it. Time to go. Where
No,
do
I
I
mean, oh, you
start?
mean
What
at
am I
nine
gonna
years
do?
yeah, at
9 years,
9 years
yeah, 9 years.
when I was done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they offered me $35,000 tax-free reenlistment for 3 years, and then they actually recommended OCS for me. So I was going to be a second lieutenant. but I declined it because I heard through the grapevine that my name and several others were on a list that deployed to Afghanistan within 2 years. One of the
You were
things that
just
I
done.
noticed, yeah, one of the things I noticed about the military is that, I mean, again, I could be wrong. I'm just speaking from my perspective. But one of the things I noticed, at least about the Army, is that what they do is if you're brand new, they don't generally deploy as much as if you're like already been deployed. You have the experience, so they just keep sending you and sending you and sending you. That's why some people have 7 deployments, some have 5, some have 3. I had 2, right? Because I got out in time. I would have had
Mhm.
3, but some had none the entire time. Some people never got deployed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Well, that was the thing is like comparatively, I mean, that was it too. That time after 9/11, there's there are a lot of men and women with stories like that of just those 18-month deployments, back-to-back deployments.
it kills you. It does. I mean,
So
it's a lot. It is a lot.
so that with your transition then, like you didn't even have a year or 2 years, like a lot of service
I had
members
30
are having
days.
now, is 30 days.
I had 30 days.
30 days. So you left the bonus on the table, decided to walk. What was that like for you, at least when you got that DD-214 in hand? Did you have a job lined up or?
Nope, nothing. I had savings. I got home and it was hard. It was actually hard because I didn't realize it, but I actually ended up becoming an alcoholic for like almost 8 months after I got out. I didn't even know I became an alcoholic. That was the sad part, right? Most alcoholics don't know they become alcoholics, right? So I was probably polishing off probably about 2 bottles of wine a day. I was a wine drinker. I didn't really like beer or hard liquor that much. I was more of a wine drinker, still am. But yeah, I polished off 2 bottles of wine a night, every night. Like I could not sleep unless I drank. And when I drank, I had a gun under my pillow because that's what I did when I was overseas. I didn't feel safe without it. And one day I was living in Hollywood at the time, and then I ended up getting a job at U-Haul because it was during the recession, the Great Recession, 2009, right? So nobody had any jobs anywhere. Um, got a job at U-Haul as an operations manager, and I hated it. It was a horrible job. But it paid the bills for the time being. And one day my room, because also in Hollywood we had tandem parking, so we didn't have our own individual spots. We had one long spot where 2 cars filled. So sometimes if some person needed to get out, needed to call the other guy to move the car so that they could do their thing. So my roommate comes over to my room because it was a woman at the time. She, she needed to get out so that she needed to move my car. So I was sleeping. She wakes me up, and I was kind of still groggy, half buzzed and drunk from drinking alcohol. She wakes up, or she wakes me up, and I was having a bad dream, so I thought I was being attacked. So I grabbed my pistol and I was about to attack her until I realized it was a dream, and I woke up and I freaked out. Right? I
What was
thought
that
she
like?
was,
Wow.
yeah. So I thought she was the enemy, and at that point I'm like, okay, I need help, right? And then at that point I need to figure out a way to feel safe without a gun under my pillow. So I switched it out for a ruler, so I could grab a ruler. That way, if I smack somebody with a ruler, it's not going to hurt that much, even if it was a mistake, right? Um, but yeah, I saw several there. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting time. I ended up going to grad school because I figured, and then after that, that was kind of like one of my coping mechanisms. Because after my first deployment, my coping mechanism was just to throw all my energy into school. My GPA actually shot up from like a 2.7 at when I was getting my undergraduate degree. It's about a 3.8 when I graduated, or 3.7, I think. So that's all I did. So what I did was I figured I'd do that again. After I had that episode, I went back to grad school, got my degree, graduated, and then yeah, worked at the port for 10 years, and here I am today. Got laid off, and here I am today.
Well, and that's how I ended up meeting you, was through LinkedIn. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember you sharing that part of your story with Vets to Industry. And I was still going through my transition too, but that part about, that the months that went by before you're like, I need help. And that turning point there. Did you find that you had a lot of support at that time
No,
to get help? No.
no, no, not at all. The VA was, well, you have to understand that this was before the VA got put on blast
Right.
by pretty much everyone.
But even just like your internet work, like close friends, family, battle
No support.
buddies.
No. Well, my mom didn't understand, so there was no point in talking to her, right? Me and my mom's relationship kind of got strained. It's better now, but there was a long time where me, my mom, and my dad, I just kind of stayed away from my family for a long time, just because there was no point in trying to tell them what I was going through, because none of them went to war. You know, my dad was always talking about his military training. I'm like, Dad, you went to basic training and you left after 6 months. That's not the military. That's just boot camp, right? You didn't go to war. You didn't shoot at anybody or get shot at. So don't talk to me about your time, because it doesn't even compare, right? And then that will get me upset, right? So no, I didn't have any support from anybody. No one.
But so when you did decide to seek help, were there any specific resources that, or how about now?
Well, as far as resources, I had to look them up, right? So nobody
Right.
like came to me. Like the Army didn't say, "Oh, here's a list of resources that you need." They literally just said, "Here's GTFO."
Right.
Right.
Right. And I see that like with and I asked that because just fast forward to now, just the plethora of resources that are available. And I do think with our smartphones and internet and just like the access to things a lot, with pandemic now moving a lot of folks virtually too, there's a huge virtual presence. A lot of these organizations are out there and have resources available. But there's a lot of it where we don't know about the resources, or it can feel overwhelming because there's so many and you don't know which one is really the right fit for you. And you can get a bad taste in your mouth if there's one that you make yourself vulnerable, you go and it doesn't work out. But that's where I've talked to some buddies where, take that step back and then sort of reroute, redirect, rethink the whole situation and just give it another shot. Try to talk to another organization. Try not to shut down just because one organization wasn't the right fit. But that's why I actually am all about there being so many different organizations available that offer resources, because the way they address different things, and even the support group, sometimes the group therapy isn't for everybody. Sometimes people want one-on-one. But there's options available.
You're right.
But I wanted to see with your transition, I know you gave us a little bit of a blurb before, when I initially met you in talking to Vets to Industry, who's one of our amazing partners. But if you were to address a room full of transitioning service members now, what sort of advice would you give them? Especially those who have been to war like you have.
I would say get with your county work sources as soon as possible, right? Every county has a work source. The problem is the county that the government in general does a really piss poor job at outreach, period. I don't think there is any listener that's listening right now that will disagree with me on that one. Right? Getting the government to fix a problem is like asking a painter to build a bridge. I'm sorry, that's the truth. Getting the government to fix anything is like asking a painter to build a bridge.
So instead of the government, would you say more so leaning towards these
no, I mean, the programs are established.
Nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, I mean, the programs are established, but they do a really piss poor job at outreach. And they've been told that, but no effort has ever been done to do that. So it's up to us to do it. My second thing I would say to veterans would be, as sad as it is, and it took me a long time to realize this, nobody gives two fill in the blanks about your military career. Nobody does. They might say thank you for your service, but that's just more or less. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful, right? It's a lot better than back in the Vietnam era, where they didn't even do that. They ended up spitting on you and calling you baby killer, right? Trust me, fully aware of that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that out in the real world, you are to most employers, you are no different than anybody else. Even though they say thank you for your service, at the end of the day, they got to look out for their own interests. So you being in the military, they don't care. They don't. But what they do care about is what traits that you obtained from the military. How can your traits help them succeed? They do care about that. So a lot of what I would say is learn how to use civilian lingo to kind of alter your experiences, right? Like, so a lot of people, let's take 11 Bravo. Let's take the standard infantry, right? When you come out, what are you gonna tell the employees? I know how to kill people, right? How's that gonna, like, how does you being an infantry guy and breaking down doors and clearing rooms and route clearing and patrols and all that, how does that help me? We don't do any of that here, right? Well, instead of saying that, say, well, you're disciplined. When you set your mind to something, you get it done. You're reliable.
Your leadership skills.
Your leadership skills, right? So they can relate to that.
Right.
And I think a lot of veterans, they kind of, even, it doesn't even have to be Army, Air Force, Marine, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? A lot of times, and especially for like veterans that suffer from depression and PTSD afterwards, it's really hard because they look at this gigantic mountain that they have to face, but their mindset keeps them locked down because of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, TB, traumatic brain injury, or MST, military sexual trauma, right? So whatever you kind of experience, it always affects your mindset. And I would tell them, look, get a good support network. If you don't have any, find a way.
And I would say that it's, I think in some cases, for some organizations, there is a cultural shift that I'm seeing. And as far as caring about the service and understanding it, taking the time to learn about it more. I mean, I have colleagues who've never served, but they ask me, they ask me about it. And granted, they may not understand fully like what we've been through, but there's like an appreciation there because they want to try to understand. And they may not get hired, like you said, they're not going to get hired on the spot just because they came out of the military, but being able to translate those skills that they learned, those hard skills, soft skills, into that. But in some cases, I am seeing a lot of companies have recruiters that are specifically military recruiters to help them, and try to hire from the military pool. So I do see somewhat of a change there, but you're spot on as far as the translation piece, because it'll only get you so far, just
Exactly.
that service part.
I mean, in many ways, veterans, for those of you that are listening, it's also, look, it's not completely like the employers don't care that you're a veteran, but they do care that you're a veteran in the aspect of this. You have to keep in mind that you are not a regular civilian. You are technically what's called a special category. So if companies hire veterans, they get a tax break at the end of the year. So they have an incentive to hire veterans.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you're always going to be preferential to a civilian just by that alone, right? So as if you, knowing that, for those of you listening, knowing that if you go into a job interview, make sure you let them know that you're a veteran, because that automatically means that if the company hires you, they get a much better tax break at the end of the year. It's a very big difference from hiring a civilian. Okay.
Well, there's some advice for any of the companies that are listening in today. It's like for any of the employers out there that may not know that, start hiring some veterans. And I know it's like even for, there's a big push now of hiring military spouses as well. So
of course, you know what, to you spouses out there, man, you guys are, you guys are flat out amazing. You guys don't get enough credit.
Like
you guys don't. You guys go through all the emotional roller coaster hell. I mean, I look, I can only imagine what it would be like to imagine like your spouse being overseas, and that they're in a dangerous area, and that they do dangerous stuff every day in and out. Like, those special forces, Navy SEALs, Green Berets spouses, man. Oh my God. You guys know that your husband signed up to do the most dangerous missions out there, and you got to sit by the phone every day and hope to God it doesn't rain. How do you, like, seriously? That's his own mental torture. And for you guys to survive that, you guys deserve, God, the highest praise thing possible. I don't even have a word for that.
It's pretty huge shout out and thank you to all our military and veteran spouses. Spot on, Paul, as far as thanking them, absolute superheroes, and just taking care of the home front and so much more. and just even being that support for when we do come back home. But I wanted to talk about shifting gears a little bit about what you're doing now. And you went through, talked about your upbringing, your military career, transition, and now fast forward, you've been out how many years now?
Oh.
I was like, now we got to do how many fingers and toes we got here.
Hold on. 13 years. Okay, I can count.
13 years. Okay.
God.
So yeah, 13 years.
Wow.
So yeah, you've been out 13 years now. So what are you doing now? I know I said it so quickly in the beginning, but to our listeners again, just founder and president of Century Institute Inc. So you're the founder. So what led you on this path to entrepreneurship? Or I should say veteranpreneurship.
I mean, ironically, it was my ex-fiance when we were, still together at the time. She was on an Uber ride, and some guy said something or another, and she was like, I would love to get security training or firearms training. And I taught my ex-fiance how to shoot. And my ex-fiance was like, you know what, you should start your own business. You'd be good at that. So I was like, all right, well, let's take a look. Right. I mean, I didn't really take it too seriously at the time, but what I ended up doing was around the same time, I was trying to figure out ways, learning about financial education, and getting kind of dialed in on that, because one of the biggest things that people don't understand is how money works, right? Just because you get paid more an hour doesn't necessarily mean you can buy more with it. Case in point, look at us right now. What does $15 an hour get you? Nothing. With gas at what, $5.80 a gallon, $6.50 a gallon, $8 a gallon. You're working to just.
See, you're going to date this episode now. People listen to this for like 5 years from now. Like, I remember at that time when gas was over $5. But I definitely wanted to touch on what you're doing now, and because I see there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, a lot of veteranpreneurs, but I really see like yours as what you're doing is really giving that sense of security. You're like giving people that confidence that they know how to operate a firearm, they know how to hold a firearm, and that security piece, and even the volunteer work you're doing. So definitely want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about that. But to talk about just a little bit about kind of the work that you've been doing, and with the groups of people that you've been training.
Yeah, so we founded Century Institute Inc. at 2019. We're a firearms and security certification and training company. So our motto is we save lives through training. Right. So everything we do revolves around the why. That's our company's why. So whether it be firearms training, we're certified through the state of California for BSIS to train security officers, all through all levels, the baton, exposed firearm permit. We do concealed carry weapons training, active shooter training for those of you that are a little worried about, what's been happening in our society lately. Situational awareness training, OC certification, and we also do executive protection training. So everything and anything we do revolves around saving lives through training. Our second set is we actually branched off a little bit as a DBA called Century on Set. So we started to do movie services now too. So we just finished our first movie, The 4 Points, where I was the set armor and magically just made it in the movie as an Asian gangster. I'm like the worst Asian gangster, by the way. Anyways, it's a cool movie.
No career in acting then, huh? No.
I have one line in the movie, but I'm in several scenes, but I have one line. So I can do one line. I can't do any of that other crap, but I can do one line. But I was mainly responsible for the weapons on set. So, that's kind of taking off. We got our second movie, The Charisma Killer, started shooting in October. And Rikishi's going to be in it. If you don't know who Rikishi is, he used to be in the WWE, Rock's cousin, the big Hawaiian Samoan dude. Yeah, he's going to be in the movie. He just got cast yesterday.
Oh, wow.
But that's kind of like our second thing. So we're trying to, we also offer prop weapons. So we're renting them out to movie sets. So it's, we're trying different things. One of the things I would tell you guys, for all your entrepreneurs out there, just try it, fail, keep failing, and eventually you're going to fail and be right.
Are any of the skills from your time in the military that you feel like you're using for this job?
Probably just straight consistency and just determination, probably discipline for sure, because a lot of this stuff, I mean, it sucks too, because being an entrepreneur has a lot of advantages, but when you fail, especially when you fail big, it
Mm-hmm.
sucks, because there are times when, I think I told you before, Mary, where I worked for days. Like today I'm working, right? But I'm not getting paid to do it, but I have to do it, right? So, it's a complete mindset change. And believe it or not, what actually got me to start the business, to kind of get me to actually do it, was a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If you guys haven't
Mm-hmm.
checked that out, check it out. It's like $10. Everybody can afford $10.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely have know a lot of folks who've gone through that book. And just trying to circle back on what you're saying about the hard skills, soft skills, as far as, because that is a leap of faith. Sometimes there's not like a book to just explain your exact path. You're navigating still. There's people can offer advice, but you're still figuring it out and gonna
Mhm.
fail. But it's going to take that self-determination and preservation to push through and say, I can do this and figure it out. Because I think
Yeah.
every entrepreneur I've talked to has gone through like a lot of highs and a lot of lows as
Oh
far as
yeah.
figuring out their career. But the thing is, you have like a whole, like you said, you just mentioned, some folks that you get opportunity to work with, and just having that team around you that, again, the entrepreneurs I speak to, it's not that they're doing this on their own. Like, they're reaching out, they're listening to podcasts, they're reading books, they're talking to other people who have done it, and they're like just learning, just like a sponge, just taking it all in. And
Yeah.
that's sort of what we're trying to do, here with Veteran Voices, is just really getting those little anecdotes, those lessons learned throughout your whole journey here, just from the time that, again, your upbringing all the way up to what you're doing now. And I see that you're giving back, and I just want our listeners to get a chance today to hear more about the work that you're doing to give back, especially to these kids. And I talked a little bit, just mentioned Stand Up for Kids OC, and was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that organization and what you're doing with them.
Yeah, so Stand for Kids OC, they're an organization based out of Garden Grove. They actually got introduced to me by the city Garden Grove. So we reached out to the city. The city and I have a partnership where we want to get security going, because crime is lately has been a little interesting. Anyway,
Mhm.
everywhere. So we teamed up with the city Garden Grove, and they linked us up with Stand for Kids. So we train the youths on security because they have no money, right? So the city fronts the bill for the money. So I do get paid for that part, but the part I don't get paid for, and I'm voluntarily doing, is when they graduate, I want these kids to get jobs, because I wouldn't be helping anybody just by going in and certifying people, giving them a certificate of completion, say, okay, fine, have a nice day, I don't care. Right? That would be selfish, right? That would just be, it would be horrible. Because a lot of these kids, for example, like I was talking to the executive director, Justine, her name's Justine, and she was saying that one of our busiest times is right now. Actually, we're June 9th. With graduation was this week, right? For most of the schools,
Mhm.
right? So they would say that right around this time they get super busy. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, we get a bunch of 18-year-olds that get dropped off at our front door, and the parents just take off and ditch them. I'm like, are you serious? 18 gone by that? Yeah, legally they turned 18. They have a few kids that get dropped off before they turn 18. When they graduate and they're still 17, they get dropped off, and they just abandon them. The parents, I had one, they told me of one story where the parents dropped them off in an RV, and they just took off and went to Florida or something. I don't know, but they just took off, abandoned the kid. They gave him $20. That's all he had. $18 and $20 in his pocket. That's it.
So is this organization, does Stand Up for Kids, what sort of services do they offer to the child, or to now the young adult, I
They
should
offer
say?
them housing, food, to my knowledge, food, housing, clothing, and workforce job training. So that's the part I take care of, right? So I
Mhm.
go in, and my services are paid for from the city, right? So that's where the partnership kind of comes in, and the city gets it from a grant from the county, and the county gets it from the United States, so on and so forth. But um, that part is I'm compensated for. But what I do is afterwards I do follow-ups, right? I don't get paid for that. I volunteer for that part, because seeing these kids just to get certified, I mean, that's one thing, but I want to link them up with employers. So what I do is I create partnerships with different kind of security companies. There's no money involved. with these partnerships. It's literally just, hey,
Right.
can you partner with me so that I can send people to you so that it's a direct path of getting hired?
Now you have these young adults who may not have worked a day in their life prior to you assisting them. So what is that conversation like with employers, as far as what these young adults bring to the table?
A lot of it is I kind of put my, my stake or my credibility on the line, because you have to think that these certification classes last about a week to 3 weeks long.
Right.
Right. So I'm meeting with them every day to train them. Right. But throughout those 3 weeks, it's almost like a long interview process. If I notice that you're going to be on your phone all the time, I'm going to note that mentally in my head and probably not recommend you to this company. But I also tell the users, I'm like, look, I want to help you out, but at some point you have to help yourselves, because if you can't help yourselves, no amount of help is going to get you anywhere.
Now,
Does that
for
make
the
sense?
volunteers, is there any sort of training involved for those who may want to look into Stand Up for Kids and volunteer themselves?
They
What
have
are
a
sort
lot
of
of
like the different skill sets they're looking from volunteers?
for volunteers, they really just do like a lot of door-to-door knocking just to make sure that all, that everyone's okay. They have like a marketing internship where where a person can volunteer and they can learn some, social media marketing traits.
Hmm.
Their marketing director, I think her name is Brittany. So she's very, very good at what she does. So she kind of does all the marketing side of it. But I try to help these kids as much as possible, like, because I don't want to see, these 18-year-olds have $20 in their pocket. And I'm like, no, look, throw them into security. I got a job that pays. And the cool thing about the security companies that I partner with is that nobody pays a minimum wage. Like, I'm not going to partner with like, big, I'm not going to name the companies, but certain big security companies that are
Right.
out there. Most people kind of know who they are. But we do partner with like, smaller mid-sized companies. All of our companies that we partner with are either military or police or law enforcement owned. So that's a criteria that I have.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just having that relationship, that building that rapport. I find that it's a lot quicker to sort of find that common ground and build that rapport with other people when you find out that they are veterans or
Mm-hmm.
law enforcement, even first responders, just in general. Just knowing, again, putting your life on the line and that brotherhood, sisterhood. So
Yeah.
I really love that exists, even though it's heartbreaking that happens and that it's still an ongoing issue and these young adults are still trying to navigate their way. But I appreciate you bringing awareness to it and knowing that people can volunteer their time and if they want to give back, and that we each have some sort of skill set,
Right.
experience that we've overcome that we can give back to these young individuals, young people. And
Yeah.
I really want to talk about how folks can get involved, at least specifically with Stand Up for Kids. Like, what was your step as far as, is it a phone call? Do they go to an event, email?
It's a phone call. The next event that we're gonna have is June 18th. I think it's at 3 p.m.
I'm
Um,
sure that the episode may not be out by then for that,
oh,
but do you have, is it like just on a regular, they have them like every couple months or?
well, that's the only one I know of so far. But like,
Okay.
anybody can call them a volunteer. They have chapters all over the country, from what I understand. So they're a national organization. But it's really interesting though, because out of everything that's been happening, they do really, really good work. I'll give you an example. I think I talked about this earlier before we started recording. One of the first kids that they sent over to me, um, he graduated on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
He started working on Saturday at $500 a day with meals and hotels paid for 3 weeks. After that stint was over up north, he got hired on at full-time security.
Wow. Teaching them that to be self-sufficient, giving them that confidence that they can do this, that, hey, I've got
Mm-hmm.
a support system. And that support system is huge. So I love that there's that available to them, that it's not just here's some money, here's a place to live for a few weeks, but you all are really just checking in and making sure that you're following through to get these
Yeah.
folks in the door.
Exactly. I mean, like, getting somebody money is it doesn't go so far, right? There's a common saying, you give a man a fish, the fish lasts for a day. You teach a man how to fish,
Absolutely.
It'll last forever.
And teaching them that skill set. Love
Mhm.
that. Well, I wanted, just to give our listeners an opportunity to connect with you, because I know we only touched a little bit on every section of your life. Let's say we went through the Paul timeline.
I
As
know
he's
he
sitting
did.
here
Holy
rocking
crap.
in his
You
rocking
made me
chair
feel
right
old.
now.
13 years. Oh
Old
God.
man Paul over here. I was like, how many years you did?
13. I was
Pause and
like,
think
oh
about that
God.
for a second. I'm like, he's ran out of fingers and toes to count.
I know.
What are you doing? No, you're almost there. You still got enough fingers and toes. But yeah, I just wanted to touch base. We were talking about Instagram earlier, but listen, maybe throw out your social media handles if you want. But just how can our community of listeners get in touch with Paul?
Well, you could, the best way right now is just because you can follow me on Instagram at Century Institute Inc. SCNTRI Institute Inc. All one word. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And if there's any veteran entrepreneurs out there, I'll be more than happy to kind of, give guidance for what I've learned so far. We've actually been published twice on US Veterans Magazine. I just write articles. I don't get paid for them, but there are 2 articles on entrepreneurship if you want to check that out. They're on the fall 2021 and then the one that just came out for the summer 2022. US
Great.
So,
yeah, I didn't know that. Well, thank you
yeah.
for sharing that piece. And I just really wanted, bringing you on today's episode, you continuing to pay it forward, sharing your skills, your experience. But the other thing, Paul, is that I appreciate your vulnerability today and just being really open about, you didn't have the perfect childhood. Not that there is one, but not everything was hunky-dory. Your deployment, your career, even just your transition. But I really appreciate your candor and being vulnerable and sharing that, because if for our listeners out there, if you are going through a hard time, please reach out to me, reach out to Paul. If you're having doubts,
Yes.
if you're struggling, if you don't know what resources to go to, if you just have so many questions, please reach out to us. And we have such a strong support network now of people that are willing to take the shirt off their back to help other people, especially veterans and their families. So just know you're not alone. And I know we just keep beating that dead horse, so to speak, of just keep saying that, but gosh, it's so you said it yourself, Paul, like nobody helped you during your transition. So we just want to know like how much it has changed now and the resources that are available. Even I want to just throw this out here too, like regardless of your discharge status as well, like I know of veteran mentors out there that will help. So even if you've done something that you're not proud of, or you're just struggling with, whether it's with alcoholism, PTS, just anything like that, please reach out if you need that kind of resource. We'll direct you to the right folks. And on behalf of the entire team here at Veteran Voices, we invite you to find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time today.
Thank you for
really
having
appreciate it. Yeah. And again, I'm so glad that Vesta Industry connected us together, and big thanks to them and our partners. Shout out to Brian Arrington, the Vesta Industry team. And this is Mary Kate Soliva wishing all of our listeners nothing but the best. Stay motivated, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.